What is the EU's sort of view on that Supreme Court decision on Friday?
Good morning, and thanks for having me on. I would say that our approach here is really trying to fully understand what precisely is going on the other side of the Atlantic. The Supreme Court ruling happened on Friday. It ruled large parts of the legal base for the Trump tariffs to be to have no legal basis, to be illegal, effectively. Since then, our political interlocutors on the EU side have been in touch with their American counterparts. The European Union Trade Commissioner Maros Šefčovič has been in touch with his counterpart, the US Trade Representative Jemison Greer. What we're essentially trying to understand here is what replacement legal base the Trump administration proposes to put in place in order to maintain its tariffs, which what we understand is their priority. And once that is clear, we will make a sort of informed assessment on our side on next steps. But we're not going to act rashly. We're going to wait to see what happens. There's a lot of confusion and instability on the other side, and it's really for them to resolve that before we take any steps on our side.
Is your general view that the deal you were striking with the US in the face of what may well have turned out to have been illegal tariffs, but nonetheless you reached a deal or very close to reaching a deal and it needed final ratification, is it that that deal should stand?
Look, there are a few things to keep in mind here. The first is that from the European Union's perspective, we've said from the get-go here that we believe tariffs are taxes. They do no good to anyone, and ultimately their cost is borne by companies and consumers. Recent comprehensive studies have shown that to be the case as regards the Trump tariffs. In other words, the cost of them is being borne by the American taxpayer, which in our estimation shows the futility of putting them in place in the first instance. What we have as the European Union been striving to maintain in transatlantic trade and investment is stability, predictability, and that remains our priority. Until and unless we have a clear understanding that the terms of our agreement with the US are no longer valid, we will continue to implement the commitments on our side.
Forgive me for asking this, but if you're so clear that tariffs are taxes and they're bad, why does the EU impose them on other countries?
Well, the EU doesn't impose them on other countries. The EU has the widest network of free trade agreements of any global power. And with those free trade agreements, we reduce, or in some cases eliminate tariffs, the better that we can have free trade, healthy economic relations with partners around the world, to generate economic opportunities for both sides, to have diversification of trade in general. So the premise of your question is a bit
So you have
off,
no tariffs. So I'm wrong on that. You have absolutely no tariffs on other countries.
Of course, we have some tariffs in place, but the point is that
so if they're bad tariffs, why do you have them in place?
The tariffs we have in place conform to World Trade Organization law. They are designed to be very sort of calibrated so that they're sector by sector. But in general, our tariffs are low, which is why countries around the world are lining up to do trade deals with us. We recently signed one with Mercosur, with India. We're in the process of getting to endgame with Australia, with the UAE. As I mentioned, we have the largest network of free trade agreements in the world, 46 deals with 78 countries. It's not by accident. It's because when you deal with the EU, you're dealing with someone who sticks to their word, who is stable and predictable and all those other boring words, but that's the basis for successful trade and doing business, and we're the brand leader in that sense.
Listen, I totally get the haphazard actions we're seeing from the US don't represent the carefully, well-planned way that the EU does things. But to just criticise tariffs, which maybe you want to retract, and then still have them, even if your excuse is you do it sector by sector as opposed to country by country, and you might do it in a thoughtful way, is a little bit rich, that's all. You do have tariffs. They're quite high, I think, for agriculture. You do still have them for autos, I think, at 10%. And obviously, you're talking to a country in the UK that used to have free trade and doesn't anymore with the EU.
I repeat, why are all these countries around the world lining up to do trade deals with the EU? Because they know that we are a stable and reliable partner, because we know that in reaching agreements with us, they will achieve win-win outcomes that will deliver trade and investment for them as well as us. Yes, it's true that we have certain levels of tariffs on the sectors you mentioned. But if you look at the overall applicability of tariffs as they relate to the EU, what we offer is very low or sometimes no tariff exchanges, and that's very attractive to trading partners. And the economic stats bear that out.